guys, welcome back to OCO Social Impact Podcast, where we are here to equip today's social impact leaders one day at a time. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some key areas where most people tend to get kind of nervous when it comes to applying for grants or looking for grants. And in this video, I'm not going to necessarily give some strategies like I normally do, but I want to talk about a few areas where people tend to have questions or thoughts around the issue when it comes to figuring out how to apply for a grant. What does the writing process look like for grants, and where do you even find sources of funding, specifically when it comes to different types of grant for your nonprofit organization. This video idea came from just my experience being in the public sector. I as you guys know, really value the work of nonprofits and social enterprises, small businesses, and how different leaders show up in these spaces to make impact. But one area that always seemed very taboo, if you will, was around grants. You know, there isn't a lot of education around how to seek grants, apply for grants, and even how to manage grants. You know, you just kind of get these random websites where it's like the government is offering a $10,000 grant, or your local foundation is offering different forms of grants. And so when I stepped into my role within higher education, our office ran several programs throughout the years that were grant funded through different grant makers, such as the NSF, National Science Foundation, or NIH. We also had a couple of grants from, different institutions and so forth, where these institutions would partner together to do different programming efforts around mentorship and professional development. And so when I came in and I began running the programs that I oversaw, it was very frustrating because there were a lot of kind of gatekeeping, if you will, around how to actually manage a grant funded program. It was a lot of jargon, a lot of terminology that I just did not understand, and so I had to go to different workshops and I engaged in different professional development opportunities to figure out as best as I could how to actually write a grant. And I found throughout this process that one, is not as difficult as people tend to think it is, but it is a very involved process. So I can understand why a lot of nonprofit leaders, especially if you operate with small budgets, may not feel the need or have the time to apply for grants, because one grant that we were seeking after, for example, it would have taken us literally months to get all of the information, correspond with the different private investigators and project directors that would help make this grant a success. In future videos, I will go into more detail and training about the processes around grants and what that looks like and what are grants and how to find them. But I just wanted to create this video to let you guys know that you're not alone if you are struggling to understand the grant industry and how to engage with finding grants for your nonprofit or your social impact organization. One of the biggest things that people talk about when it comes to finding grants is the complexity of the process itself. Usually, most grants, especially bigger grants that can range from $10,000 up to several $1 million, they require time and effort. The grant makers want to know what projects you're going to be engaging in. How are you going to engage in serving whatever target population that you're working with? Where are you getting your research from to back up why your program needs this money and why the grant should be awarded to you? And this can be very daunting for new applicants or individuals that have not been properly trained on how to write a grant. There are different guidelines, even down to the terminology. I remember when we were looking into a grant through NSF, there were specific terms that we could use that meant one thing within that context, if you will. And so it was very interesting to just retrain my mind to think about how to write, how to approach this writing project for this organization, this federal organization. And, it just seemed very intimidating in the beginning, but with guidance and again, the professional workshops that I engaged with, the process wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. If you don't have enough staff, if you don't have trained professionals within your organization, or you cannot hire, a consulting firm or a team to come in and help out with that process, many times the grants are kind of left on the floor or on the table because there isn't just enough time to actually go after those grants. Kind of area where people tend to be kind of intimidated or maybe even frustrated when it comes to seeking for grants and writing for grants is having limited resources. As I previously mentioned, most grants tend to go to those that are trained in that area. They kind of know what to look for, know how to write. They may have connections within that agency, so there are specific areas where they may know certain people that can help them, in their application process. Or there are typically the bigger organizations that go after these grants with the local foundations and so forth. If you don't have the proper toolkit to help you write grants and engage with this process, then most people tend to walk away from it. And something that I learned throughout my process of seeking for grants for a particular project that I was working on was you cannot apply for a grant alone. You can, but most people tend to build teams around grant writing and looking for different grants. For example, with this particular project that I was working on, there was myself, but there were also 7 to 8 other individuals that were specialized in different areas. So we had a faculty member who was good in mentorship and education. Then we had someone who was the program evaluator. Then we had someone who engaged in professional development and chemistry and specific areas around STEM. And so when you are engaging in grant funding projects, you want to make sure that you have a proper team. And unfortunately, a lot of the small to local nonprofits tend to not have those resources. The third point that a lot of people that I have engaged with have talked about when it comes to looking for grants, applying for grants, and managing grants is the uncertainty of the funding landscape. And when it comes to nonprofit work, if you've been in this industry for a while, or even in the public space, you know that a lot of times projects and things can change, and you could be looking at a particular grant for your organization, and by the time you're getting ready to write for it, sometimes your organization is in a different place. And so you want to be mindful as leaders or the individuals within your organization that are seeking for sources of funding and you're looking at grants. Think about where your organization is. Can your organization afford to go after this project? Because it's going to take time, resources. And when I think of different grant opportunities, I try to look at the health of this program or project and see, where will we be in the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years, and so forth, depending on how long the grant will fund. There are different grants that can provide funding for different durations of time. I have seen some as short as a year to up to 5 years. And so when you are looking for different grant opportunities, I would encourage you to think about where you foresee your organization being. Where do you foresee this program unfolding, and can this grant actually be helpful to where your organization is trying to go? So when it comes to the uncertainty of funding, when you are going after grants, because these are typically long-term funding investments, you want to make sure that you are clear about where your organization is and where your organization is headed. And then the final point thing is accountability and reporting. There are a lot of reporting reporting measures that grant makers require of those that they are giving their dollars to. There has actually been some talk where some people believe that sometimes these organizations can be a little bit strict about where they want their dollars to be allocated towards, but that's kind of a part of the deal when you are looking for different sources of funding. And if this organization or this foundation is giving your organization grant money, they want to see what it is that your organization plans to do with these dollars. Now, when you are weighing the pros and the cons, you want to make sure that the money is worth it, because you can look at an application perspective and say, okay, this organization is willing to offer us $10,000 for through a grant. But when you break down how much 10K actually is, and where the grant agency is wanting these dollars to be allocated, it may not be worth it to you. Every time my colleagues and I would go after different grant opportunities, we will always go over. So it will always be at least a couple $1,000s more than what our annual budget would require to run a program of some sort. And so again, thinking about the accountability and the reporting measures, if your organization needs to do better with the risk mitigation and internal reporting structures, I would highly encourage you to do that first. If you know that your organization is not the best with data and making sure that you can translate the impact into the numbers, I think that it's very important for you guys to do that first, because most grants, if not all grants, are going to require some form of accounting, some form of reporting, where you're going to have to check in and let them know what it is that you're doing. And you would rather be an organization that already have those measurements in place, rather than you get this grant and now you don't know how to engage with the funding and you're doing things incorrectly, and sometimes you can eventually lose all of the money altogether. I hear you guys. I have been there myself. For whatever reason, grants have always kind of been this like hidden thing, when really it shouldn't be, and it shouldn't be this difficult process that people have to go through to get sources of funding, because you want to make as much impact as possible. But in future videos, my hope is that I can go into much more detail as I am continuing to grow in this area about what the grant process looks like, different qualifications and requirements around grants, and how you, as a new founding nonprofit leader that may have limited resources, can engage in going after grants to bring in different forms of revenue for your organization. So please like, please share, please subscribe as you are engaging with OCO. We have our YouTube channel where we do our video podcast weekly. We upload every Friday at 11 a.m. We also have our content on Spotify. The handle is the same, OCO Social Impact Podcast, and we also have it on Apple Podcasts as well. I will be getting back to uploading weekly TikToks for you guys, where I just talk about different things related to social impact, so please hang out with us there. The handle is also OCO Social Impact Podcast. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, those that have been consistently checking out our videos and stuff. And until next time, try to make the world a better place today.